Hello, it's Jimmy. I'm going to talk a little bit about what retiring early means to me. Maybe it's more retiring on my time, not necessarily a predetermined age. Because I tell people now that I'm retired, because it's probably the easiest way to explain why I'm not showing up to work every day. And they'll say, "Well, how old are you?" And I'm 45 now, but I was 44 when I retired. And they say, "Well, you're too young." So I guess I have to look at what that actually means for me and try to explain it. And I'll be honest, sometimes I don't even really know what it means. I just know I'm not working a full time job, 9 to 5, and I have money to live on. So that's all I need to know for myself. But is it a permanent state? Is it flexible? What does it mean to society? What is an acceptable term? I think people just assume you go into the workforce and you stay there for 30 years and hopefully you make it to the end and then you can uh, really retire and hopefully live comfortably. There are some societal norms, I suppose, and I'm really not one to necessarily follow all of those. So if that makes me eccentric, that's fine. I will happily accept that label of eccentric. It probably fits me quite well. I know there are obviously some things that retirement means as far as like collecting Social Security and enrolling in Medicare and taking distributions from your tax deferred retirement accounts. And those occur at certain ages. Obviously, I'm not at those ages to do that, but I still am able to make work optional. Perhaps that's a better term. And folks may stop me and say, well, you do work, you have a part time job, so you're not really retired. And yeah, it's true. I do work 19 hours a week. It's a fun little job that gives me something to do, something to look forward to every day, keeps me in a routine, and it's just enjoyable work. I still enjoy working around other people, certain people, I suppose, and it's just different than what I used to do. And it's fine, and I'll continue to do that for as long as it works for me and works for the place I'm working at to keep me around. And I believe if I've made it this far, they probably aren't quite sick of me yet. It's a minimum wage job. There's no benefits other than it's maybe entertaining for me. And I get to be outside. I get to work around things that I enjoy being around and people that are rather pleasant to be with. And that's a major part of it. It really isn't about the money. Now, does that mean that I'll never go back to working a full time 40-hour plus week job somewhere? Not necessarily. I'm certainly not looking for that now. I mean, I certainly could go back, but I can be extremely picky about what that would look like and where I would work and the type of work that I would do. For now, this is working out great, and I can see it playing out for quite a while. And it has really helped me slow down life, slow down my thinking, being more intentional about the things that I do. It gives me time to take in life and observe things and really participate and enjoy things more. I don't know anyone that can have a hardline date on when they plan on retiring, especially if it's many years out. I know of plenty of people that had to retire because of health reasons, a job situation. Maybe they're towards the end of their career and there's been layoffs, and some people will leave work to take care of family. I'd say a small number of folks actually planned on a certain date and met that on their timeline at 62, 65, 70, whenever they got maybe close enough within a year or two and said, okay, it's time to go. And they did. Well, who I have not run into really are people like me who have been able to leave full-time work early, we'll say. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this channel, is because I don't know that there are many folks like me out there. So I'm just putting my story out, and maybe people can either relate to it or maybe watch and say, well, that's dumb, and offer some suggestions. I'm open to that as well. I have watched a lot of videos on YouTube that show a lot of theory, but not really a lot of practice that is similar to what I'm doing. With such abysmal financial literacy, it's no surprise that people aren't figuring it out. This whole notion of retirement or planning for the future, saving and investing. Or maybe they just don't even bother to try. I don't know if people just are having a sour outlook on life and figure it's not even worth trying. I assure you it is, even if times seem bad. I think it's good to examine your own situation and do that constantly. It's not a, well, here, let's do this thing, let's get a budget going, and then never revisit it. I think it's just like exercise. I mean, you really can't wait until you're 620 pounds and then say, well, maybe I'll look at getting an exercise plan together. If you've gotten to that point, you've probably done some things incorrectly, and now you're going to have to make some major lifestyle changes and stick with it. To me, the same with finances, personal finances. You've got to start young, stay on a routine, and then it's kind of easy. I mentioned in my budgeting video that we do a budget every month, look over the expenses and what's coming in. It's very simple. It doesn't take very long for my wife and I to sit down and go over it. At this point, it's just maybe a 15-minute meeting at most. I started investing in my early 20s. I knew that at some point there would be a kind of a momentum that would build up in those accounts, and their value would increase to a point where it was gaining more value and dollars in it than I was contributing. And I knew early on that I would be able to stop working full time well before the age of 60. As the situation this past year has evolved, that came a lot faster than I was originally planning on, but I do plan fairly conservatively. The problem I was trying to figure out was, what do I do in that intermediate time between stopping work and being able to access the tax deferred accounts, because those you cannot take money out of penalty free until the age of 59 and a half. Well, I got a ways to go for that. I found the concept of building a gap account, and that essentially is saving or investing for that time to be able to use that money or let that money grow until I'm able to access those other accounts. And for me, I use just a mutual fund through a major broker. I set it up online. I contribute money into that, and it has grown. Now we're able to take money out of that, and that'll probably keep us living the simple way that we do now until 59 and a half. Now, there were a confluence of events that have occurred in the last few years that made me realize that the technical portion of being able to do this was quite possible, but wrapping my mind around actually doing it was something else. And so I had to take little steps in my mind, do little exercises to actually let myself do it. I kind of made it into a project of being able to retire early. Kind of how I operate. I like to make things into little projects and research the heck out of them. And with any of the projects I do, I am very conservative in what I figure things will grow, but I do overestimate a safety margin. When I was aware that the technical aspects of it were in place, when I would think about actually doing it, that kind of scared me. Because I think I, like most people, kind of like the comfort of working a 9 to 5 job. There's a rhythm to life that goes along with that. In order to build up that confidence of doing that, I would start putting estimated retirement dates on my work calendar, just to kind of play through how that was going to work, what kinds of things I would need to do to make that happen. And it was a good exercise, because I thought of a lot of practical things that would need to get done. I would actually kind of picture myself like, okay, if I'm not here in my office anymore, what would I do? How does that make me feel? And sometimes that date on the calendar, it would get closer and I would say, no, it's not time. I'm just not feeling like this is going to work for me mentally. Financially, it was not going to be an issue, but it really was more of a struggle to get over myself of trying new things, we'll say. But I would keep doing that. I'd keep putting a hypothetical retirement date on the calendar. As I did that, I would find more kind of parts of the financial engine that I needed to keep in tune. And it really was interesting because now I had this really kind of solid technical plan, but I just didn't have the emotional fortitude to pull the trigger on it and do it. Well, eventually I accepted that the plan was going to work. There were some other life situations that came into play. The time was right. And I had finally worked up enough mental fortitude to say, this is going to be the actual date and I'm going to follow through with it. So we made some plans at home as to what that was going to look like. Well, the benefits of leaving eventually outweighed the reasons for staying at work. And I didn't really have any major issues at work at the time that I was ready to leave. It's not like I just threw my hands up one day and said, F it, I'm out of here. Screw you guys, I'm going home. And I get it, all jobs, they have something undesirable. It's work for a reason. You don't just go and ride the tilt-a-whirl all day. Although that probably make you sick if you did that. But there were enough little things at work, and it was just good. I felt like leaving at the time I left, it was going to work out fine for me, and I wasn't leaving any sort of disaster back at work for other people to clean up. It was just kind of a good feeling like, yep, now is the time to move on. Some unsolicited advice that I will give is everybody should create a budget. And no matter what your plans are, if you like working, great, continue to work, but make a budget for your life. Things will be so much easier. And if a situation arises, or you say, this might be something I want to do, you already have kind of a pathway for doing that if you have a budget and understand where you are financially. The budget is going to be a nice picture of reality. And there's not enough reality in our world when you're looking at stuff, especially online. Even if you don't plan on retiring early, it's still kind of fun to have a budget. You can imagine and dream and think about things that you would maybe like to do, and perhaps you wouldn't even be thinking about doing them if you didn't sit down and try to do a budget to see what's possible. Now, I know that when I come to full retirement age and I can access all of my retirement accounts, I'm not going to do something silly like go buy a jet. That's just not in the picture. And that's frankly fine with me. There's other things that I would want to do anyway, but it just is an example, just a nice mental exercise to play with. I know some people like to maybe do that with the lottery. Well, what would you do with all that money? I know plenty of people that would probably just put that money up their nose. Daydreaming about what the future could hold and coming up with goals, good thing to do. Maybe even play around with a hypothetical date that you'd want to retire, whatever that means to you, whatever retirement means to you. Maybe just cutting back on hours at work, if that's a possibility. Or you could find work outside of what you normally do, maybe a totally different career path. You think about it and you realize, I actually like where I'm at. I think this is a fine place. Maybe there's a few things I'd like to tweak about it. And, go ahead and try to do that. Improve that situation. Always be trying to improve your own situation, taking little classes and courses, always keeping your mind engaged, I think is important. Don't just show up to work and be a robot. I mean, there's certainly aspects of that you just can't avoid, but, really make sure that what you're doing, that you feel like you're contributing, enjoying what you do. You may not find it your passion. And that's not always necessary, but feeling like what you're doing has meaning. That's more important. For me, in my retirement journey, the three things that I really needed to have in place was a solid budget, a real one, not some fantasy. Had to have some cash available, and that was the gap account that's invested in mutual funds. And I had to trust the plan and the courage to leave my comfortable but somewhat unfulfilling job. Well, those are my thoughts on retiring early for today. As always, thanks for watching and hope you're having a great day.